Welcome everybody to Recovery Live. Came to Believe Recovery's weekly live stream where we talk about everything addiction and really everything recovery. And I welcome my co-host Alicea from Auburn, California. How are you today, Alicea?
I'm good. It's cold
And
here and rainy, but I'm good.
yeah, it's rainy here. I'm in Orlando, but not cold. It's 80
Is it?
degrees.
Oh
I'm
my
lo-
gosh.
yeah, I'm loving it. After leaving the snow from
Yeah,
2 days
right?
ago. Foot of snow and landed in this morning. I mean, literally shorts, and it's weird when you're coming from like really cold to like 80 degrees,
Yeah.
It was fun.
I've never been to Florida.
Well, going to the gym this morning, it was good.
Yeah, I
But
got my run in and then it started raining, so I got it in right in time.
well, I'm still kind of floating on cloud nine from the virtual retreat. Everybody, we are coming off a retreat weekend where we had 30 something, 40 people from all over the world on our retreat, going through the 12 steps over 3 days, like the founders were doing it back in the 30s. We had somebody from Australia on, we had people from California on, we had people from Florida, from New York, from the UK,
UK,
and
Wales, Ireland.
Ireland, Germany, Berlin, from Germany. Um,
So it was like 3 a.m. for the girl in Australia. So
right.
getting those time frames, yeah, but she did it. She
Yeah.
was there the whole time.
Yeah, it was the next day. It's like almost three-quarters of the world had participation in the retreat, and we've never we had a Hawaii last time, but not.
Not this time.
And the amazing thing was Alicia and I did some an intro with her on the first night of the retreat, and um, she has a medical background, a mental health medical background, and so sometimes when you talk about 12-step recovery with people like that, you run into some, they have some issues with it maybe. And she did a little bit. I mean, talked about the possibility of that. But by the end of retreat, she was all on board. She got where we were coming from, I think, and had really gotten a lot out of it. And so had many others. So we were always we were amazed and happy that the first one we did during the pandemic was so successful. And now we still see that the message can be spread even on Zoom. Um, so what's
What's
coming up? Well, this week I have a master class I'm teaching in New York City down in Battery Park to teach a group of people about what we do, to see how we can help some of the hurting and suffering and seeking people in New York City out of shelters and sober homes and things, which is going to be the subject that we're going to talk a lot about this episode of where do people go? How do people live? How do people get a jump start? How do they get their life back? And what can they do to try to get off the streets and live in a safe environment while they're getting their life back together? And Breezy's going to come on in a minute and talk about what she's doing to
for
help
the
in.
workshop? Sorry I interrupted. Are you doing it in 1 day, 2 days, half day? How long is
Well,
the workshop that you're doing
well, the
in New York?
workshop I'm doing really is just a master class to create interest in this. They have so little knowledge about what we're doing that I'm going in to do a 2-hour master class with a group of people just to explain to them the option that we have that exists
Okay, so
and
big
see what their interest.
overview in
Right,
two
a big
hours.
overview, history of where this all came from, how we go through the steps in a principle format, the principles, and how it has worked and how it might work if it was part of something that they would want to be interested in. Well, they'll come to Kips Bay if they want, or maybe we'll do something with them.
Oh,
Then, guys,
hopefully that would be good if they can go to Kips Bay and experience it themselves.
it would be great, and you'll be there, right? You'll be there, right?
On the East Coast,
Alicia hates New York
the
City.
cold snow blizzards.
Not till
I'm not
April. We don't have snow in April.
Oh, well, if it's
It's
April,
April. Yeah.
maybe.
Agoraphobia. You see, it just goes to show you we're never done growing. Alicia has some things to
I'm
grow.
not
She
afraid.
just
I'm
doesn't like
just
to leave her house.
there's a lot of people on the East Coast that you don't really need me. to fly all the way from California.
Well, you like that? We need her, but we
You
do.
don't need me. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
We don't have leaders
But if you
like
do,
you on
okay,
this
I
coast.
will.
You just don't want to come to the city. We know what
I
it
know.
is. There's a
I
good
know.
gym. All we got to do is say gym, and you come.
Oh.
Anyway, we'll digress, or we could pick at each other all afternoon.
Talk about the gym.
Yeah, there will be a gym. Then Alicia will be there.
Okay, back on track.
So while I'm doing that on Friday, that's just an interesting thing that Came to Believe is doing in New York City to help create awareness and bring things out. And then we're going to do our second mocktail hour at 32 Prince Street, where the first one was very successful, where people came to share and meet new friends in a sober space. And we had a panel discussion. We're going to have another one on resolutions, just the big picture of making resolutions, and on Dry January, because that's what we're in right now. So it's a promotion of Dry January. And it's the same reason we did the virtual retreat the first weekend, take advantage of offering programming for people that might be sober curious, understanding what it is, or testing out whether they could stop whatever it is that's got them in bondage or whatever. But we're going to run that second mocktail hour. So we're really excited about that. Then in February, the next event is the shelters at City Team in San Jose, California. We'll be out again, running those people that are living in a shelter, men and women, and run them through the weekend retreat. It was so successful. This is like the 4th time we've done it. City Team wants us to come back 3 times a year now to San Jose, and then we're going to be in Portland in March. So this is really moving, this stuff that we're doing, and we seem to be moving into the shelter areas and to being
Who's telling you to turn off the light or something?
Yeah, they're telling me to turn off the lights.
That's her room. She should know.
Yeah, I know. My lights really look that bad. This is so distracting to do this. But
it's okay. Real time. It's fine.
Better?
I don't know if it's any better, but
I don't know any better anyway. Thanks, Sue.
That's so funny.
Well, so that's the stuff we got going on, guys. We've got some things going. And then we are going to be in Kips Bay in April, which would be a public retreat. Anybody can come. Kips Bay, which is 33rd and 1st Avenue in New York City. It's between Midtown and downtown over on the east side. We have a facility that we're going to be doing it. And then we'll be back in Malibu in June, and we got things rolling as we move in. I think we're going to be in Nevada City, and we're going to be in Leesburg, I think. So lots going on. Anyway, while I was out in California, actually, I was, pressing my LinkedIn and adding things, and I came across Taste Recovery and Breezy in my LinkedIn, and I read a little bit about what that organization does, and I was in California, and I'm like, ooh, I need to connect with her. So I pressed a button and said, hey, would you want to connect? And she messaged me back, and we messaged back and forth, and then we were on the phone within a couple of days talking about just what she does, what she's trying to do, and what her app does. And then we were talking a little bit about what I do and what we do. And we said, we got to get you on Recovery Live to talk more about it, which will help her and will help us. So without further ado, let's bring Breezy on.
Hello.
Hi, Breezy.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Another California girl.
Yes.
Now, are you a California girl?
Huh?
Are you a California girl, born and raised?
Oh, yeah. I was born in the desert, so I'm used to like 120-degree weather.
Oh, all right. So tell me about that desert. Which desert?
Palm Desert, the Coachella Valley.
Wow. You are a California girl.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Born and raised.
Wow. So I would be a Jersey boy for sure, born and raised here. I've been a bunch of places, but I'm in New Jersey is where I'm from. So never seen 120 ever.
Never?
But I haven't seen -5 or -10.
Oh.
No, I've never been 100. The most I was in, Breezy, I was in Phoenix 2 years ago, and it was 108.
Okay.
So
once you pass 100, it all kind of feels the same.
It does. I lived in Las Vegas for a while, and it's like once it gets over 100, it's hot. It's just hot.
You just don't want to leave your house, pretty much.
It's so much fun to hear how the way other people have been brought up and what they are and aren't used to. I met a guy at the gym this morning. We do a lot of gym talk, Breezy. Sorry. Alicia and I are a little nutty about the gym. Because Sarah's in the background shaking her head, even though I can't see
Somehow we always, but the gym. Did I tell you about the gym?
Because, getting healthy and being fit is a part of being in recovery, we feel. Taking care of your body. So we feel like it is. So I went to this gym here in Orlando that I got a free pass at. I've become an expert at talking my way into gyms one time as I travel around, talk your way in.
Yeah.
And the kid that was behind the counter said he'd only seen snow one time in his life.
Wow.
And I'm like, these are people that you meet around. Like, you've never seen snow or cold weather? You don't have any experience with that? No. And I bet you say the same thing. You've never seen snow or not very often.
No, I go to Big Bear quite often to go snowboarding.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad's from Michigan, and so he was a big skier or is a big skier. So he raised us always going to Aspen or wherever to go skiing when we were little.
So, Breezy, tell us about your app. Says Taste Recovery, the #1 sober house search app.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about it when we first spoke on the phone, but tell us, big 30,000-foot overview is what is it that you do? What does Taste Recovery do?
Yeah. So I started Taste Recovery. I launched the app in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And at first I was like, oh man, this is worst case scenario that this is when we're launching it. But then come to find out it was the best timing because everyone was home, realizing that they were alcoholics or just relying so heavily on drugs and alcohol. And then they're, quarantined and now their loved ones are seeing it for the first time and needing help. And so we launched the MVP in June of 2020, and it all stemmed from my own personal experience in a sober living home. I got sober in Florida, and which is funny that's where you're at. Oh, there's a question. Do you want me to answer the question as they come, or how does that work?
You can. I would answer it as they come. Sure.
Okay. So how does someone add a sober home to Taste Recovery? So it's actually very simple. You literally just go, you either download the app on your phone or you go to our website and it will say sign up or register. It depends on if you're on the app or the website. And you'll say that you own a sober living and then create a username password. And then it will direct you to 2 pages of questions about your sober living home, and you answer all of that, and then you could you choose whether you want to be a basic listing or a pro listing. The pro listing, you can list your phone number, your website. You have the ability to have the chat feature, so people who are looking for sober living homes can message you through the app. So if you do the pro listing, you have the ability for people to contact you essentially. And then you do it all through the platform. You click submit, and then your home is live on our website, which, is very easy and makes it really useful. Or also the pro listing also allows people to leave reviews of sober living homes as well, which to me, that's where I was going with my story of why I started Taste Recovery. I lived in a really bad sober living home in St. Pete, Florida, and I was there for, I think, about 3 months, and it was crazy false advertising. The website was, we're going on jet skis every weekend, and, they're going to do this and that for us. And the owner of the house lived in New York. And it was a man who would come down and take us out to dinner and kind of act like he was our pimp. It was very weird and gross. Our house manager was getting loaded. We would tell him that she was getting loaded. He didn't care. It was one of those that we had a druggy buggy and she would drive us to meetings. She was like romping curbs. And we actually got pulled over one time, which was like, we all were like, okay, she's going to get caught. Like, this is going to be good. And they let her go. And we were like, oh my gosh. So, yeah, so it's crazy. And then I ended up getting kicked out because I was one of the only sober people left in the home, and they wanted me out. They did not want me to, tell on them or, get them in trouble. And so I was the one that ended up getting kicked out, and I moved back home to California. And I ended up in one of the best sober livings out in Dana Point. And I stayed there for another like 9 months. And, it was a completely different experience. The woman owned the sober living. She lived right down the street. She was there every Sunday night for our weekly meetings. She was very involved. She cared very deeply about who she allowed in the home. And most of the women in that home ended up staying sober, whereas the other home, a lot of the people ended up relapsing. And so I saw from my own personal experience how important it is to find a good sober living. And I ended up going to school once I got sober, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to make a difference in this community. And so I launched the app, and it's been an incredible journey ever since. And about 2 years ago, we decided to do our own retreat, which is called Camp Sober Fest, and so which is out here in Southern California. And we had 135 people show up for our first one, and it was out in Big Bear at a YMCA camp, and we all get together, and the whole premise of it is just to have fun in recovery, like get back in touch with that inner child. So we do high ropes, rock climbing. We do an Olympic races relay race, which is like the funniest thing ever. Balloon toss race, just like anything that you could think of from a kids camp. That's what we do. And then also, of course, we have meetings. We all sit around a big campfire and listen to a speaker meeting for an hour. We do karaoke, a talent show. So it's been really fun. And as far as where Taste Recovery is going, we are in the process of creating Taste Recovery to be all levels of care. That, sober living was the main goal, was to, make sure that people can find a safe, secure, sober living. And now that we've been doing it for almost 4 years, I've seen that it's just as hard to find a good detox. It's just as hard to find a good outpatient,
Right.
And so we want to offer all levels of care on the site, be able to give as much information as possible to that person who's looking for treatment. And then our final phase of Taste Recovery will be an experiences page. So similarly to Camp Sober Fest, that's something like where I would post it, essentially, like on Airbnb, they have an experiences page, or Eventbrite.
Right.
That would be, that's the final phase of Taste Recovery, where people can post their meetup groups. If they're having a mocktail hour, they can post it on the Taste Recovery experiences page. So when someone's feeling like a little down and out and can't find their people, they can go onto that page and find an event that kind of suits what they are interested in, and find people who like the same things that they do. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up within the next 6 months, and
I'm going to come to that camp event.
Oh,
I know, that's so
best.
fun.
It's the best.
Yeah,
Actually,
I'm
this
sure we could
upcoming
too.
year, we're changing locations. We're going to do it in the Sequoias this year. So now we're going to have, paddle boarding, and the camp has little boats and stuff like that, so people can go and enjoy being on the water, which I think is also extremely healing. So
how many sober houses are listed now on your site?
We have almost 500 sober houses on it.
And where do they stretch from?
California to New York, Florida. I mean, all over the U.S. We actually do have one on in South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
which is pretty crazy.
yeah, we have a friend. I was speaking to you on the phone, and Matt Enland, who asked you that question, is connected with this person that I was telling you about. He's in Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Where this woman that we got connected with, who runs 3, 4, she might have 5 of them now, sober living, and she's pretty tough. She keeps them. I mean, if you go to her sober living, you're getting, you have to do your duty. You have to do you have to be working. You have to pay.
Yeah.
It's if you got to be in it or you're not in it.
Yeah.
And she has all of the people. She doesn't make everybody, but she highly encourages everyone there to come to the Came to Believe retreats that go on to help them with their recovery. So, and we have another gentleman, 7 houses now. See, Matt knows the deal. I knew that would prompt him to tell me what. And I am going to still get you hooked up with her, and maybe Matt will now. I'm sure he was asking for her, actually, right?
Yeah. How do you keep houses like that Florida one from going and
that's a
adding
good
them
question.
to your app?
Good question.
Do you interview them and check them out first?
So that's kind of where the reviews come from. So the house that I was at was actually certified. And to me, that just meant that, from all the information that I've gathered, and I could be wrong, but, they usually come out once, maybe twice a year, do their due diligence for that time frame, but then nothing after that, So to me, my big thing was, okay, why is Yelp so successful? Yelp is so successful because people actually want to go on and leave reviews of what is this restaurant actually really good? Is it bad? Did I have good service? Whatever. Because they've created this culture around leaving reviews. And so that's something that we're really trying to do now, especially with our social media presence, is that really honing in, if you had a good experience in a sober living, please go leave a review on them. If you had a bad sober living experience, even more so of a reason to go leave a review. We need to have each other's backs and make sure that, we don't have to, just because we went through it doesn't mean someone else has to go through it, And so and honestly, because we have reviews, a lot of the bad sober livings want nothing to do with us. And I can tell within the first minute of talking to them on the phone, the second I say that people are allowed to leave reviews, they start asking so many questions about it. Well, if someone leaves a bad review about us, then what? Can I delete it? No, you can't delete it. I'm so sorry. And it's okay, they don't want to be honest. They don't want to be on it anyway. So, they kind of weed themselves out, and if they don't, I've seen only a handful of bad reviews on the homes that are on Taste Recovery, and then usually they'll delete their profile. So they definitely, they don't want to be seen, and it's something that we're really trying to focus on. Is if a sober living doesn't want to have reviews, don't go to that sober living, because they're probably doing something. And so that's the culture that we're really trying to show for, people who are looking at Taste Recovery, or, all of the interviews that I do. I try to make sure that people understand that there is a reason why a home does not want to have reviews. They don't want people to know what's going on behind the closed doors. And it's usually not a good thing. So that's a good question.
It's a great question. Same with shelters and same with rehabs. All have, I've heard nightmare stories of the shelters in New York City. If you want to find drugs, go into one of the shelters.
Yeah.
The place where the drugs are best. But let's talk a minute about where we fit in the world of recovery for anybody and where sober living fits in for somebody. This idea of continuum of care, not idea, it's a thing, continuum of care. And where along that spectrum, and maybe the little bit of differences for anybody listening who says, what's sober living? You know, what do you mean sober living? Is it a shelter? Is it a rehab? Is it right? Because somebody might ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and you can tell me that, correct me, please, Breezy or Alicia or Cass from behind the scenes. But I would think we start with somebody who's completely down and out and they are looking for harm reduction. We're starting with harm reduction, just keeping them alive, maybe. And they're not interested in everything. And from there, it might step them to a detox. Or if they're homeless, maybe a shelter because they have nothing, that they move from that where they need they just need basic accommodations. They just need shelter. They just need to be housed someplace where they're inside and have access to a shower and a meal and can get themselves settled. Then there's actual rehabs, full-fledged, medically based rehabs where people go in for 28 days or however long. And then they come out and they need somewhere to go and they have no family, have their friends. And really a shelter's not the place for them to go.
Right.
I see then they go to sober living, a place where they can go, which is generally inexpensive. You apply to get in. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are the requirements for the sober living that define sober living home and give us an overview of what is the kind of criteria go for being in a sober living. I know what my friend does in Minnesota, what you have to do to be in one. But what are the general criteria if somebody says, how do I get into a sober home?
That's a really good question. So honestly, the way I describe the sober living industry is that it is like a bunch of mom and pop shops. Like it's not the typical Macy's department store where you know exactly where you're getting every single time. Like there's just a ton of different ways that people are running their sober livings. There's no rules. There's no regulations in this sober living industry.
Wow.
So literally anyone can open one up and they can decide based on their own personal experience of this is how I want to run my home. And that's how they run it. So it really is just, it's kind of like the wild, wild west. But normally if you're going to a quote unquote good sober living, they're making sure that you're doing a UA and it's clean. They ask you how long you've been sober. If you need to go to detox, they'll usually ask you to go to detox first because they don't want you coming in and possibly harming the rest of the people that live in their sober living. There's a house manager that lives there that's usually not the owner. And the house manager's job is to make sure that they're drug testing you probably 3 times a week. They're making sure that you're doing your daily chores, making your bed every morning. There's a house chore list where it's okay, this person's job is to take out the trash this week, and this person's job is to clean the floors, whatever it is. And then they make sure that you're going to meetings. Some sober livings will actually provide transportation to and from meetings. They'll provide transportation to and from IOP programs. Some will even provide food for you. It really depends on what you're looking for, what you need. Pretty much every sober living is gender specific. But there are some that are co-ed. There are some that are geared towards couples, which I don't know how that works, but it's best to separate for a little bit, get sober, and then come back together. But that's just me. And then, and there's some sober livings that are $200 a week, and then there's some that are like 2,000. You know what I mean? Like it really is. It's very similar to the treatment industry, right? Like you can find all sorts of different types of sober livings depending on what you're looking for.
So what it sounds like is, of course, the treatment centers really took a beating during the pandemic. Or no, the treatment centers didn't. They made a few people really wealthy because it mandated that the government, it was part of the Affordable Care Act. They were paying for treatments, and so that you saw that movie where they just had people going through and through and through and through, gaining $30,000 every time they went through. I'm sure that unscrupulous people go in everywhere. Hopefully there'll be some regulation one of these days around the industry so that there's some care for somebody who's trying to get their life on board instead of fleecing them for just everything that they can, because they take some tax write off, probably the owner of the homes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
For something like this, and they've and then they're really not providing the care that they need.
Right.
Do you think that most of the ones I've heard of that I knew is you had to be working to be there?
A lot of them, it's either you have to have a get well job or you have to be in program, aka IOP. And then if not, you have to at least be looking for a job. And if you're looking for a job, you haven't found one yet, you need to be doing your steps while you're at home. And some also require that you leave the house. Like you have to be out of the house by 9 a.m. and you can't come back until 2 p.m.
So one of the shelters that we have done retreats at in New York City, St. Anthony's, Alicea, that's in the South Bronx. It's a shelter, but he wants to kind of run it as sober living. It's a shelter, but it's really, everyone has to work and you have to leave the shelter at a certain time in the morning and you can't come back till later. So I've seen that model too. You have to leave. They don't care what you do. You have to, they tell you guys, unless you're sick. If you're sick.
And they don't let them in the door until they test again to get back in, right? Don't they test them?
They do. They test them to get back in, yeah. And at this shelter, they make them give them their cell phones. But that's just that shelter. But they test them, when they walk through the door. And if they don't blow sober, they don't let them in. So this is in the heart of the South Bronx in New York City. So maybe we could get Father Ignatius to come on one of these days. What do you think, Alicea? I don't know.
I'm surprised he hasn't yet.
Yeah, I don't know if the Franciscans are all about doing something like this, but I probably could talk him into it. Anyway, it's just such an interesting thing. When I got sober, I didn't, which is 18 years ago, Thursday, coming up. I'm trying to think if I even had an option of a sober living. I think it's become a larger industry, if we're going to call it an industry, in the last 20 years. Would that be a fair statement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, it was Oxford houses, which they're still around. They're still around, but yeah.
Wow. So here I'm going to throw this is going to be a question, if you can answer this one, Beezy. How many sober houses do you think there are in the United States?
There is no actual data on how many there are. My guess is 10,000. 10,000.
So, I hear you talk about the potential for all this different ways that they're managed or not managed. And it makes me want to put a team together of us and go to see some legislators and start talking about how we change, right? Who changes stuff? We do, And, they say, what can a few people do to change anything? When in actuality, it's only been a few caring people that have ever changed anything.
Yeah.
That's some quote I've got coming from somewhere. But I get so mad that there's this person who's trying to just do better and someone's just out there ready to take advantage of it. And it makes me mad. Whatever happened to you in St. Pete, that sounds like a terrible thing.
Yep.
That was going on for you. And all you were doing was trying to get better. Right?
Yep.
There, Anna Louise Branson, who is in Kentucky, says there's hundreds.
More than 10,000.
Yeah.
Well, there's only 22,000 treatment centers in the United States, like roughly. So that's why I can't imagine there being, but they're also, they don't have to be registered. So there really is no way of knowing how many there are.
22,000 treatment centers, that number just shocks me. And just, it should just ignite our community of the magnitude of the addiction problem, that we need 22,000 treatment centers. And we know that that only gives access to 10% of the people that need it. It's not enough. It just makes me so just inspired and mad to keep going. 22,000.
Where did the name Taste Recovery come from?
Let's hear about that. I want to know that.
So I was really stuck on trying to figure out a name. Every name I had Googled, there was something already taken in the space. And my mom asked me to go to church with her, which I don't do often. And I was like, okay, so I went and I was sitting there and the pastor said, to taste something is to discover through experiencing it. And I looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, and she was like, what? And I was like, that's it. And she was like, that's what? And I was like, that's it. That's literally God telling me the name of my company. And it was just like that simple. I went home, I looked it up. I literally got the LLC and the domain that day. Like it was just, to me, that's what we're doing. We're discovering ourselves through experiencing all of these new life experiences. And it was perfect. It was exactly, a spiritual experience. It really was. And a lot of people have asked me that, like, why Taste Recovery? And I was like, God gave it to me. Okay. I don't want to hear it.
Our gang will go with that.
Yeah.
I'll jump on board with that 100%. So I want to just make one. I want to talk one more comment about sober living versus rehabs as a result of the pandemic and how that the whole environment has shifted. And then I want to talk about 12-step recovery and what we do, and maybe your experience with 12-step recovery and how what we do can somehow dovetail in and be involved in what you do, and how you're trying to help people. But I know that during the pandemic, when the treatment centers and some of the shelters were just shut down, they just told people that they had to go out on the street. They just shut down because they didn't have any way of covering, and a whole bunch of treatment centers and shelters closed during the pandemic. So the amount of access to that level of care, that piece of the continuum of care, shrunk during the pandemic because they couldn't survive and they didn't have anybody in. So this would have been a real opening for sober living to take hold and expand. And maybe it seems like it was, at least in the last few years. You could talk more about that if you see that since the pandemic, because we know that some of these treatments, they never came back, some of the shelters. You have something like 25% of them in Wisconsin closed and never opened again.
Honestly, I've seen a lot of sober livings close.
You did.
And it's not because of the pandemic. It's because of the cities cracking down on sober livings, and they want them out.
Wow. Look what Anna Branson says. She Googled. Mr. Google always does good for us. So there was 18,000 sober living in the U.S. in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That we need so many places. So just a question for you, Breezy. What experience have you had with 12-step recovery, if any at all?
That's all my experience. Yeah, I went to, I don't think I said it, I'm 8 years sober. And I have been in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous ever since. And it's, I go to 3 meetings a week still, and still work my steps and still sponsor lots of women. And I love it. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Wow. That's so great to hear. And what we do, Breezy, is we have our links back to one of the founders, Clarence Snyder, who was sponsored by Dr. Bob, and Steve Foreman, whose house I'm in right now, actually, was sponsored by Clarence Snyder in
Whoa.
person. So it's like the horse's mouth. We talk about the program the way they were doing it back in the 30s and 40s, and in which they were doing it quickly over a shorter amount of time. And we present these retreats over a weekend, and they're not a one and done. They're a one and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
We get you through 1 through 9 and teach you how to do your 10, 11, and 12 for the rest of your life. And for people that are ready and people that this is their thing, it's a life-changing experience for them, like it was for these guys back in the 1930s and 40s, those that came in and grasped a hold of this program quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we do. We're filling this piece of the recovery market, if as it were, for those that are ready to do this and will grab onto these principles and learn about how the program was always intended to run, which was quickly, and then live on 10, 11, and 12 and grow, not over, right? It was always meant to be that way, but that we can get on with it. And so that's what we do all over the country. We've been doing it for 60 years.
Wow.
Independent retreats everywhere. And then over the since 2015, we became a 501c3 in order to spread. And we've spread into shelters and all these places that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that we can add our piece to this recovery anywhere. And so we know, Breezy, that there's people that come to the sober living homes that are in all different categories of recovery, from the beginning of it to white knuckling it to whatever they're going through. And they're hopefully looking for a way to make a better life and how to have a sustainable recovery, and the founder said in the 12 steps says that the problem has been removed, that we found a solution, that there's a miracle of it. I mean, the promises that it says in our lives are the things that we just scream from a megaphone to say the 12-step recovery is not supposed to be a life of struggle. It's supposed to be a life of success and happiness and peace and all it says in the 9th step, right? A new level of peace and happiness and this and that and the other thing. And so people that are searching for that, we just want to be able to be an opportunity, so we'd love every sober house in America to have on their website or their, resources guide, the link to Came to Believe's retreat. If this is for you, come to it. And we would love for anybody that comes through our retreats that are getting a start on life to say, where do I go now? To be able to put your website on ours.
Yeah.
So that they would have access to sober living. And I can say that we will do that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would do that.
So,
and I think when we talked over the phone, we were discussing possibly trying to get like a very shortened workshop for Camp Soberfest.
Absolutely. Camp Soberfest. We're going to do it. Alicea and I will come and do it in the Sequoias. I volunteered her already. She's got to leave her house though, Breezy, to do that.
Oh no. How long does the process take?
Well, good question. We do it over 3 days. A weekend. Yeah. In many cases, Breezy, it's longer than they were doing it. Dr. Bob would take people through the steps in an afternoon.
Yeah.
This is the guy who did it. I often tell people, there's a quote in the big book talking about Earl T, who went over to Dr. Bob's office to do the steps in an afternoon. And when they went into the 4th step, he went over some of the major character defects that he had as far as big picture natures that he wanted to get rid of. And I often say to people that write volumes and volumes and volumes for their 4th step, and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks. If that was the way that they were doing it, if that's where the success was, if that's what the founders meant, why didn't Dr. Bob have people doing that? And nobody can answer. And I'm like, wouldn't you have thought he would have had them doing it?
Yeah.
If that was the thing that they should be doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, we show people how to do a 4-step very quickly. And Breezy, you could be right now shaking your head inside going, you can't do a 4-step in a half hour, an hour. But we hear that all the time. We love to hear that, right, Alicea?
Yeah.
And but you can, when you see how they did it, and what it does, Breezy, is it gives a level of freedom, and it gives people a set of tools to work on then for the rest of their lives. We launch you into 10, 11, and 12. So it goes over a weekend, and then there's follow-up. We're going to do a follow-up meeting today. We have meetings listed on our website. And really what the meetings should be, if they are the way they were back in the day, are fellowship. It's the fellowship afterwards. The program never was the meetings, right?
Right.
The program was always the steps. The meetings are the fellowship. And that has been, something that's flipped in the recovery world. People say, I'm in the program. I said, what do you mean you're in the program? Well, I go to meetings. Well, then you're in the fellowship.
Right.
The program, I know it's semantics and it's language, but we're always trying to tell people, if you read the big book, if I handed you a big book, Breezy, and you knew nothing about Alcoholics Anonymous, nothing about recovery, and I handed you a big book, you wouldn't go to a meeting because it doesn't tell you to go to a meeting. It tells you to do the steps. You wouldn't even know what a meeting was, right?
Right.
So this is the kind of things that we talk about at the retreat, just to say the importance of the steps. We don't try to shame anybody or say that the meetings don't have value, and 90 and 90, and for someone to go to a sober place, to get to this place where they'd be ready to even go through the steps. We understand all of that works and that the meetings need to be in there. But the program of Alcoholics Anonymous was the steps. And so as quickly as we can get somebody to go through the steps, that process, that's the only thing they had to offer. We provide that in this format, not quick format. It's the format that these guys were and women were doing back in the 30s and 40s. When, by the way, Breezy, it was most successful. It had the highest rates of recovery back in the 30s and 40s.
Yep, makes sense. Definitely.
So that's what we do. That's how we do it.
So how long does it actually take, though? I know you're saying a weekend, but
well, when you're on site, it's Friday evening, so you come after dinner, and we have a program through the evening. We do steps 1, 2, and 3, and we talk about being an addict. Are you an addict? We talk through this whole idea of the phenomenon of craving, and we talk about the allergy and the spiritual malady, and have people that are coming. You get a lot of people come, who maybe aren't sure that whether they're that what they quote unquote real addict or not. Do they have to do this? And then we talk about the power, turning ourselves, a power that could restore our sanity, and what does that look like to you? And we try to talk to people about reducing their bias and prejudice towards a supreme being of some sort, and being open that maybe there's something greater than them that could help them. That's what we do on Friday night. We really try to get people leveled where they're ready to be engaged with something now that could be personal to them and be ready to do step 3. Then on Saturday, we do step 3 through 9, which are like working the inside part of it. AA 1 through 7 is really the inside job. And then 8 and 9 starts the outside job.
Yeah.
We get you through 8 and 9. And of course, 9 is homework. You're going to be maybe working on 9 for however long it takes. And then on Sunday, we do what's called Living in the Go. And we teach 10, 11, and 12, which is how we're going to now live. So we get you ready to take on a manager. We get you ready to be ready for the process on Friday. All day Saturday, we give you the tools and take you through the long form, really, of 10, 11, and 12. And then we show you how to use 10, 11, and 12. And we take you out Monday morning and give some really practical ways of starting to work 10, 11, and 12. That's how it works.
I love that. That's so cool.
The changes, Breezy, and people, I wish you could have come to Malibu when we were just there. We just hadn't connected by then, just to see it. But we are going to be back in June in Malibu, and I'll be out to see you, and hopefully we can connect while I'm out there in the week after next.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We see lives changed over a weekend, and people never drink again. We've had people come that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on rehab come and never drink again, or drug or whatever. And that's the other thing. It's not only alcohol, right? It's not only alcohol. The original manuscript of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? 12 steps said, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of this course of action, we tried to share this message to others, especially alcoholics. So they had others in it there. So they knew that this message could help anybody that had a brokenness or an addiction of any type. So if you're a food addict, if you're a gambling addict, if you're a sex addict, if you're an Al-Anon, you're welcome to come, family member.
Yeah.
And so we see all these people find recovery, and they can leave. You know, we promote the idea that you can be recovered, Breezy. They were. Why can't we be?
Yeah.
You can be in recovery if you want to be, we say, but these guys were recovered. They called themselves recovered, not cured. And there's a difference. We talk about that philosophy and that mindset, and it's really uplifting. So that's what we do.
I love that. She's right. You should start a chain of recovery centers.
We should. Y'all should, right? You know, is that y'all should start one chain of recovery centers? They'll have gyms in them, won't they, Alicea?
Mandatory.
and
carnivore, no carbs, no sugar.
Well, you know, Breezy, I'm sure like you, I don't know. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we offer a lot of our programs for free, but they're not free. I always say. I mean, we offer something for somebody to come and get a jump start, but somebody's paying for the food or something that you're having. And so we're always looking fundraising, and all the money just goes to help people. So most of the shelters we do at no cost to anyone that comes. Our in-person retreats, the cost is just, if you come to Malibu, it's just the room and housing. You know, it's like $300.
Yeah.
Weekend. You get the program, 6 meals and 2 nights at a retreat center for $300. So the cost is we're just covering our costs and our overhead.
Right.
We're really just trying to share the message. So that's our deal. I see maybe some great things in the future between Taste Recovery and Came to Believe. What do you think?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
Well, we're at our last 5 minutes. So, Breezy, I really want to thank you for coming on and talking to us about sober living. I'm sure there's going to be lots of after conversations, as I saw Matt asking all those questions. So we're going to hook you up with some people, and I think we can have a much bigger discussion when I'm out there in California next week.
Absolutely.
Let's get together and see.
And I'm assuming the app is called Taste Recovery.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So just search Taste Recovery and
in the App Store. Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't wait to meet you in person, and I'm very grateful to have been asked to come on here and share what we do as well.
All right, great. Breezy, well, we'll have you back again, because this has been a fun conversation, and people love to hear us from all over the country doing all sorts of different things in recovery. And we got good questions, and we had good responses. So,
absolutely.
You know, we'll certainly have you back again. But for now, have a great rest of your week, everybody. And we'll see you next week right here, 10 a.m. in the Pacific time, 1 p.m. on the East Coast where I am, and 6 p.m. in the UK for another version of Recovery Live. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
All right.